Hello, this is Lisa Bowerman, and you're listening to The Sirens of Audio.
G'day audiophiles, you're listening to The Sirens of Audio, the podcast that explores the universe of Doctor Who and the audio medium. My name is Dwayne.
And my name is Philip. G'day audiophiles, g'day Dwayne.
Oh, g'day Philip. We've got a very, very exciting one lined up today, haven't we?
I'm pretty excited, let me tell you.
Yeah, we've had some really good Blake 7 material come out over the last few months, so it's going to be really exciting to talk with Sally. Share the chat that we had with her with all of you in just a few minutes' time. So that's really good stuff. But up ahead, do you know what it is, Philip?
No, what is it, Dwayne?
Oh, you know what it is. It's a rabbit hole. Here we go. All right, Philip. So this rabbit hole, I thought I would talk about. Because Sally Knyvette is mainly known for Blake 7, there is one Doctor Who that she is very well known for, and of course that is Spare Parts. She plays one of the scientists involved in the creation of the Cybermen. So that's a pretty huge part to be associated with.
She's Davros.
Well, that's my rabbit hole topic. That's my rabbit hole topic.
Okay.
Because Spare Parts is always touted as a genesis of the Cybermen story. But is it a genesis of the Cybermen story? Because if you compare it to Genesis of the Daleks, right, we've got a Davros working on the travel machine right from scratch. If you're to go back to Spare Parts, we go into Spare Parts. The Mondasian Cybermen are already there. They're already half-formed. We've got the committee that's there as well that we never really know, even at the end of the story, we never really know too much about it, how it got there. It certainly wasn't put there by Dr. Man Allen, I don't think. So is it really a genesis of the Cybermen, or is it a sort of the post-genesis of the Cybermen? What do you think about what I'm... Do you see where I'm getting with this?
Yeah, I do see what you're getting, and I haven't thought about it quite that way before, but it's always good to think through things in a different way. I've always taken it in terms of this is the creation of the Mondasian Cybermen, and although we've entered the party, I mean, with Davros, we've entered the party pretty late too, because, I mean, those Mark I travel machines are pretty well formed, and, you know, he spent years and years of, you know, the Doctor and Harry and Sarah go through that cave of all these failed experiments. So there's been many, many years that we haven't seen on stage with the Genesis Daleks. So I think that, you know, it's been equal in terms of it's a bit like things take us bit by bit, don't they? And we don't realise the dangers till we get there, which will be a topic we'll talk about soon. And I think part of the Mondasian Cybermen story is the fact that the people were heading themselves down a particular path without realising the dangers of where they were going. And they were doing it because they thought it was going to help them survive, but ultimately led to the destruction. I think often we don't see the things that look like they could be good. We don't always take into enough account where we're heading. But yeah, tell me more what you think about Dwayne in terms of not so much a genesis.
Well, because I don't think we've actually seen the moment when the Cybermen became the Cybermen. Although you could say that's General Zhang at the end when he suddenly takes control of Mondas, when it's all... But we haven't really seen... I still don't know exactly why they started to go that way. It's not really explicit in describing how the Mondasians turn themselves into the Cybermen. The Mark Platt story is more of a character piece than anything else. So
do you think that actually models life more seriously? I mean, in terms of I don't know, you look at some dreadful person in history, be it an Adolf Hitler or someone, when did he become evil? When did he become such a monster? Can you point to a time where this is the creation of this monster as a human being? Don't the Cybermen simply reflect in the story, don't they reflect the slow compromise after compromise that leads to evil? That's deep.
Yeah, you've got me paused for thought now, Philip. I think if Genesis of the Daleks allowed for the I, Davros series from Big Finish, so leading right up to the creation of the Mark III travel machine, or even the Mark I, whatever it was, perhaps there's more scope for delving back into the history of Mondas. That's what I'm saying. I think there's a potential for looking at that history. Like the Mondasian Cybermen in spare parts were used in being used in that first episode to go up to the surface and basically maintain the engines for propelling Mondas through space. That's what they were used for. But what started Mondas being propelled through space, and how did the society develop from there? Because we already get into spare parts, that society is developed. So I'm interested in how it gets to that point. So to me, it's not a full Genesis story. It's kind of towards the end of its Genesis.
So we need a prequel to Spare Parts.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying. That's what I should have just said, and we could have just moved on.
You know what? I think that sounds like a fantastic idea. We actually still got enough of the cast. We could make that happen.
Oh, wouldn't that be good? Big Finish. Get Sally in to do a prequel.
Fantastic.
All right, I think that's enough of that. Let's come back with our chat with Sally Knyvette right after this.
Oh, what is it? There's no one on reception because reception's been smashed to pieces.
From Big Finish Productions, The Worlds of Blake 7, The Clone Masters.
Jenna Stannis.
Hello, Hinton.
How wonderful to see you again. You've barely changed. I'm under commission from a clone master.
A clone master?
Their ruler has died.
Sound the bells. The Queen of the Clone Masters is dead.
There's quite the power struggle underway on their homeworld. If I can help them ascend to the throne, the Resistance might have a powerful new friend.
Stop all this! Stop all this at once!
Travis, I didn't think we would make quite so dramatic an entrance.
It's you! No! Keep back!
This is a research base that specialised in cloning.
She thought she recognised you. She called you Lara.
It cannot be a coincidence that there is some sort of connection to both the Clone Masters and the Aurons.
Commander Travis, I am currently with a patient.
You know who I am.
Of course I do. Travis, Space Commander, Alpha 15105.
You shouldn't have come here. It's not safe.
We must make a hasty exit. Come on!
Dr. Sim!
Okay, that does it.
I believe I'd make a worthy commanding officer.
Do you really?
I'm Space Commander Travis. I am destined for great things.
What are you doing?
You have an Auron in your crew, don't you? Callie.
Why are you asking?
Because I came across an unusual Auron myself. A Lara K.
Big Finish. We love stories.
So back in the 1970s, the BBC decided to create a new space opera. Part of that was to establish a new crew in a sort of Wild West situation. Part of the original casting was our guest tonight. And so today we welcome Sally Knyvette. Welcome, Sally, to Science of Audio.
Hi, lovely to be here.
It's lovely to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
So where are you exactly?
Well, exactly. I'm in Fulham, in London, in a little hut, which is my new studio, which I built during COVID, so I could do voiceovers and talking books and stuff. And yeah, so I'm in the middle of London and a long way away from you.
Okay, so you live in Fulham now. Can you tell us a bit about where you grew up and about your childhood?
I grew up in West Sussex. My dad was a doctor. And I was a bit rebellious from a very early age. So when it got to about 10, when I should have gone to secondary school in England, I didn't write anything on the exam, so I wouldn't go to this particular school they wanted me to go to. So the sum result of that was they sent me abroad. At the age of 11, I went to a school in Switzerland for 7 years, which was quite an odd thing to do, but actually my temperament was I think it really thrived on it. I became very independent, very used to traveling around Europe. I became a ski racer. I learnt French. I lived in the mountains. There were a lot of good things about it. There were obviously some strange things about being away from your family from that length of time, but I was not the sort of kid that minded that too much. My father had this absolute plan that I would become a bilingual secretary and marry a diplomat. Well,
is that because that's what women should do? Just get married to someone well and be secretary?
Oh, yeah. In those days, come on, remember my age. In those days, the dizzy heights of my profession was to be a secretary. A bilingual secretary is what he wanted, and then to marry a rich diplomat, and that was all sorted. But afraid that
didn't quite happen.
Didn't quite work out for poor old dad. No, I did absolutely the reverse.
So, do you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I've got a sister who's 10 years younger than me, who's an artist. I had a brother who tragically died when he was 56 of cancer. So that was pretty.
So what was their schooling like?
My brother went to a very smart public school called Rugby, which I don't think did him any good at all. And the school I was meant to go to was the sister school of that, but they stupidly took me to see it before I did my exam. I took one look at that. I thought, I'm not going there. So that's why I left all my exam papers absolutely blank. And I mean, this is absolute verbatim. I was so scared of telling my dad. I didn't tell him until I was 40 that I'd left those papers blank.
What did he say then?
Well, that was very stupid, wasn't it? So, yeah. So, I mean, I was a rebel from the beginning, but he learnt to like it later on. But yeah, I mean, being an actress was not even on the cards. It would have been horrific idea for him.
So is being an actress partly in rebellion to him? Why did you decide to go?
No, nothing rebellion. No. I mean, I lived in France after Switzerland for 3 years, and then he said, you've got to go to a secretarial college. And I lasted for about 4 months and I got thrown out. I absolutely hated it. And it was everything I knew it would be. And then I started running a French restaurant in London with some friends who'd come over from France. And it took off. It was a place called the Gasworks, and it was very popular. And we became very successful. And while I was there, a friend of mine walked in the door called Tilly Tremaine, who was married to Trevor Precock, the actor. She said, guess what I'm doing? I'm acting. I said, really? She said, you would love it. You'd love it. I said, well, how can I become an actor? And she said, come and meet my teacher. So that's how I started. I went in secret to have lessons with her teacher, who was a wonderful woman called Beryl Cook, and I started doing Shakespeare and poetry with her, but it had to be in secret because my parents would have gone ballistic. Then it came to about 2 years in, and that I realized I really wanted to try my hand at acting, having studied with her privately for a couple of years. It cost £1 a week, which it's about $1, I think. It was not expensive. And I was still running a restaurant while I was doing it. So after 2 years, my little sister found a tape of me doing, it was a speech from Winter's Tale, Perdita's speech from Winter's Tale. And my father walked into her room and she tried to hide it. And he saw it and he took it from her. And then he discovered I was doing these Shakespearean speeches. And then it was all blown open. He found out what I was up to. He was very shocked. And by that time, I was completely determined what I wanted to do. I must have been about 21, 22. And I said, well, I want you to meet my drama teacher. And that's when it all changed, because I took her to see my parents and she was very dignified. She was the first Mrs. Freddie Eynsford Hill in My Fair Lady on stage. She was a wonderful, wonderful actress, great, great character. I took her to see my parents and they sort of began to relax on it. And they said, well, you know, you're obviously going to do this. And that's how I started. I started and went into rep almost immediately.
So your training was all private training? No, you didn't go to a drama school?
Wasn't private training. In those days, in the early 70s, we had a wonderful system called the repertory system, which many older actors cut their teeth on. Basically, you would work in a different town at a theatre and you'd do a season. You might do 4 or 5 plays. I worked in Ipswich and Sheffield and York and Farnham, lots of different places, and you'd be booked for a season. And so you do one play and then 2 weeks later you put on another play. So you're always doing a play at night and you're rehearsing another one during the day. So for a 20-year-old young aspiring actor, that was absolute bliss and very hard work, because you were non-stop learning and performing. But that's where we cut our teeth. And many a good actor would say repertory is probably the best way to learn your craft.
So did you have a method for remembering lines? Because if you've got so much in your head, how did you keep it in there?
Oh, everybody. Well, at that age, you've got such a good brain. You remember it. And yeah, no, I mean, it's not really about remembering lines. It's, I mean, people often ask that question. It's about working out what you're doing all the time. What's my action? What am I trying to do to you? At the moment, I'm explaining. So I'm thinking about, okay, so I'm explaining this bit to him, and then I'm rejecting, and then I'm attacking, and then so it's about looking at your intentions underlying the words. And once you've worked out in your head what the underlying intentions are and actions, it makes the script very easy to learn, as long as it's well written. If it's badly written, which I have had to suffer a few times, it's more difficult. But well-written scripts, I mean, Shakespeare's easy to learn if you know what you're doing underneath. What are your intentions? What do I want from this character? That's what we're all doing all the time in life. What do I want? You want me to do this interview. I want to come across okay. You know, there's always the subtext that's going on. What is the subtext to the text? So it's not about just parrot fashion learning lines, in my view. I mean, many actors work differently, probably.
So working in rep, I think you worked in rep for about 6 or 7 years, didn't you? You did it rep for quite a long time.
Yes, I worked for about six or 7 years. Yeah, after that, I had a very good agent at the time, and obviously I was young, and he started putting me up for televisions. And then I got a break to do a series in Greece, where I played a junkie called Samantha, who was living with an older man, and they were hiding up in the hills of Crete in caves, hiding from the police. And that was my first breakthrough, and I obviously was thrilled to get that. And while I was filming that, I didn't know, but David Maloney, the producer of Blake 7, came to watch me filming, but I had no idea he was there. Because he was looking for someone to play Jenna. And then I went back to England to do the studio productions, the studio scenes of that. And he approached me while I was doing that and said, would I like to come in for a chat?
What show was that?
It was called Who Pays the Ferryman?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was with Betty Alvrenetti and Jack Headley. And I was with Patrick McGee, who's long since died, but was a wonderful man, completely wild, Irish, alcoholic character, but such a brilliant, fascinating man who knew Samuel Beckett very well. So that was a very good start for me, getting that telly. And I'd done a few other things like Z cars and, lots of the popular things of the day. But this was the big one that changed things, I think.
No, because we don't want to talk about Blake Seven soon. Just in terms of, we've just been talking about your craft a bit as an actress. How did you find the craft in terms of going from rep theatre, where you're working on a play, I guess for 6 to 8 weeks, repeating every night, I guess you're growing characters, to television, where you learn it once, you do it once or twice if you're lucky, and then it's over. How did you find that transition? Was it different?
Well, it was a hell of a shock. I mean, I think because I hadn't had the training, although you didn't have training in television in those days anyway, you only had theatre training. But when I saw my performance in Who Pays the Ferryman, it was so over the top. I was absolutely horrified. I couldn't believe it because, everything you do is much bigger on stage. You project more, it's bigger. You're trying to get across the line to the audience and to people in the gods. And it's heightened in a way, certainly louder. When you're on telly, you bring it right down. It's got to go all go on in your head and behind the eyes. So the intention becomes, the ideas are similar, but you just bring it right down, and you have to have the confidence to do very little, which of course I had no idea about. And it took me a long time to learn and make mistakes in front of the public. But, that's how it was for me. I think many people had different experiences. But yeah, I found television to begin with, I thought it was all going fine, but I when I looked at it back, I was absolutely horrified.
So that's really the job of the director, isn't it, to know where things should be pitched and to either pull you back or push you forward?
Well, very much so, yes. And kind of bring it down a bit, or can you lift that a bit, or, you're not connecting there or whatever. But unfortunately, you don't get directed much in terms of psychology of performance. In those days, you can get directed much. It was all about getting the show shot in time. And so they were getting their camera shots, the background, the camera angles, getting all that. But they weren't really ever telling you much about what to do. In fact, virtually nothing. So you were just doing it on the hoof. You were doing it by instinct. And
is that because they didn't have the knowledge to direct actors, or because they're so busy trying to get the technical side finished that they can't deal with the actors?
I would say it's a bit of both, and it depends. Everything's unique to that particular director. Yes, some directors. I had a director on Emmerdale who was a pop video director, and he had no idea how to direct actors. And I had a very heavy scene that day where I had to burst into tears. I was always bursting into tears on Emmerdale, but that requires an awful lot of focus and attention. He said, "Well, when the boom gets to 30 degrees, just start crying, will you?" And I remember saying, "No, I won't actually. You've got to give me 5 minutes to get into this." And, you don't just start crying like that. You've got to do the inner work, and it's got to come out naturally. But a director who doesn't know how to direct actors is a nightmare, frankly. You get a lot of good directors in the theatre, and probably on good films and good TV series, you get much better calibre of directors. But some were great. I did have some wonderful directors, but largely you were left onto your own devices, and I didn't have the knowledge when I was young of how to develop a text or a script or my character, and that very much bled into Blake 7 too for me at the time.
Now, you mentioned David Mahoney saw you. He came and saw you in Crete originally, or just in the studio?
No, I think he did. I can't be certain on that, and he's no longer with us, sadly, so I can't ask him. He became a good friend, but he certainly came to see me in Birmingham, where I met him, where I did the studio stuff, and then I was brought in for a good talk at the BBC. And
how did the process of Jenna happen? Were you given scripts? Did you audition?
No, I never auditioned. No, I know. I'd also done a big thing called Sarah, which was a documentary it was a docudrama with Nigel Hawthorne playing my father. It was called Breakaway Girls. That's right. And I think he'd seen that. And it was about a girl breaking away from her parents and doing her own thing. And I think he'd seen that. And that's what made him finally offer me the part. And no, I never had to audition. I think he'd just seen enough of my work to feel that I was right for that part. all I can remember is being taken in with some of the other cast, and we were all sitting on a table, and the producer came in and said, I think it was called Ronnie Marsh, and he said, now listen, this is going to be a really major show. This is going to be Britain's answer to Star Wars, and we're going to have £1 million to do it. And we thought, wow, this looks exciting. But we had no conception that it would become what it has become. And you don't, you just get on with the job and you work from day to day under the given circumstances. But I was very pleased to get it, obviously.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions, Blake 7, Warship.
We came here to deliver a death blow to the Federation.
There they are.
I wanted to tear down Star One forever.
There's hundreds of ships. Hundreds!
Star One has another purpose. It controls a satellite minefield, a barrier between our galaxy and the next.
We're under attack! Zen, initiate pattern Sigma positioning. Random maneuvers at your discretion.
Confirm.
Can you see all those mines? Hundreds of them.
They're burrowing into the outer hull.
2 more ships are through. Should we pursue?
Leave it. Stay focused on the gap in the grid.
Goodbye, Blake. I wish I could say it's been a pleasure.
Sutherland, fire!
Subscribers get more at bigfinish.com.
What was your view of science fiction generally? Did you enjoy it, or was it something you had no interest in at all?
No, I had no interest at all, and I was absolutely appalling. I'm afraid I love Shakespeare, and I didn't ever read science fiction. And in fact, I got hauled up by the producer for giving an interview to some newspaper saying Sally hates sci-fi, and I got into terrible trouble. I have to say my view has completely changed now. And this is honest, and not just because I'm talking to you. It's, I can now see the brilliance of sci-fi. I mean, much more than I could at that age. I just hadn't been subjected to it. I couldn't understand why it was so popular, really, and important. I like deep psychological dramas and things that were, the series that really galvanized me to wanting to become an actress, apart from meeting Tilly in the restaurant, was seeing Judi Dench play Talking to a Stranger in the early 70s. And that to me was brilliant. It was all about a girl who had a very dysfunctional parenting and problems, and it was how on earth she was going to have a life with this sort of background. And that to me was where my heart lay, rather than spaceships at the time. But I soon got used to it, and I can't say I didn't enjoy it. I did enjoy it a lot.
So what were your first impressions of the cast? Did you know any of them beforehand at all?
Didn't know anybody, not a soul. I couldn't possibly tell you my first impressions. All I can remember is that we had a really, really good team, and we got on very well. Jan, who I saw yesterday, is still a great friend. We went to the movies together last night, Jan Chappell. So we're still, after all this time, apart from being survivors, we are still very close friends. I got on with Gareth terribly well. We used to have a lot of fun. I sometimes think that must have come over, even though we weren't joking on screen, but we were very closely knit, and we were working under a lot of pressure. And for me, in scenarios that I'd never, ever done before, I'd never been in what Paul Darius detective said, you've got to learn about a 5-camera studio, Sally. I said, well, how do I learn about that? Well, you'll learn eventually. And it wasn't very helpful. But I had no idea, in those days, you had 5 cameras on you, and the more you understood how to work in front of those cameras, the better your performance would be. But I'm afraid I didn't really know what I was doing in those days.
Now, my understanding is you were given like 4 scripts at a go. You had to learn the 4 scripts. You do all the because the Liberator set was so huge and complex, you had to film every script in that set for a week, going backwards and forwards between stories. Is that sort of how it was happening? Was it just total mishmash?
Not quite like that. In the studio, we did one episode at a time, okay? And we rehearsed it in the rehearsal room, and then we'd go into the BBC on the day of recording, and we'd have supper, which God knows why we'd have supper beforehand. We had supper, and then you had the 2 or 3 hours time slot to record what we'd rehearsed in the rehearsal room. But that was for the inside shots, the Liberator shots. We then had location stuff where you go away for 2 weeks, or maybe it wasn't as long as that. I can't remember now. Maybe it was, a few days probably. And you go down to anywhere like Wookey Hole or Salisbury, Army Plains, or Dorking chalk pits, anywhere that could be conceived to be an outside location of a planet that we'd just arrived on. From my recollection, those were done with virtually no rehearsal. That was for the sort of OB, outside broadcast, they used to call it. We didn't have much rehearsal, you just sort of did it. So it was a very, very odd combination of things. Massive pressure running up to the night of studio, and it had to be got in on time in those few hours. And if something went wrong, like one of the special effects blew up, or one of my angle poise lamp boosters fell off in my hand, we'd be losing valuable time to do the scene. And that awful feeling at the end of the evening when we've got 5 minutes left, come on, go, we've got to get that in, because if you went into overtime, it was obviously massive amounts of money, and they couldn't afford to go into overtime. And again, if you were on outside broadcast, the weather suddenly became bad. I remember when we did an episode about moon discs, we were pulling these moon discs along the sand. Shadow, thank you, yes. And it was pouring with rain. And they kept trying to put up these enormous lamps, which would make it look like a sunshine planet. And we'd be dashing out from under umbrellas, trying to grab a scene, and then going back in again, and, trying to make it look like this incredibly hot planet. So there are all sorts of things that would cause problems, and very often the actual dialogue you had, or the scenes you had to play, were done under pressure because special effects or weather or time constraints were not working with us. So it was quite pressurized, but we never, to my knowledge, did 2 or 3 episodes at once, which I did massively in Emmerdale, but we never did that in Blake 7. But it was, it was exciting, and I was learning on the hoof. I was learning my trade. But
so how did you find the quality of the scripts altogether? The quality of the scripts, what was your opinion of the scripts?
Well, to begin with, I thought they were pretty good. Again, because I didn't have the knowledge of how to make a scriptwriter write for me in those days. I just took them at face value, and I probably didn't, if I'm absolutely honest, I didn't read the scripts in depth like I would now. I probably read them 3 or 4 times now, and make up a whole world. In those days, you'd look at your scenes and you say, yes, that's that and that. They were fine, they were good, but I became more and more frustrated, as I think has been well documented, that I became more and more of a sex symbol. I wanted to be this intergalactic space pirate and feisty woman who could do all the special effects like Sigourney Weaver. And every time anything dramatic happened, the boys would take over. And I got so annoyed by this because it was, we were capable. Jan and I were very capable of doing all sorts of things, but it was, you were sort of slightly pushed into the background as time went on. I was certainly given wonderful costumes. I was made to look great, but I wanted to get involved more deeply, I think. And as the script writing went on, it became more frustrating. And years later, at a convention, I met Terry Nation, And he said, I wished I'd known you as a person. He said, because I felt I wrote well for the men. I wasn't so good at writing for the women. And if I'd known the sort of spirited person you were, I could have written a lot more for you. It was a very sweet thing to say, because it was a sort of acknowledgement that the girls were sort of different levels of sex symbol or dominatrix or whatever, you know.
I don't think Terry ever writes women well in anything. If he even
But
has
he
them.
actually, but for him to admit it to me and to be that honest and straight, I thought was very sweet. And I mean, it made an enormous impact on my life, all that, because, you know, it was very much the 70s at the BBC where the men dominated anyway, and you were, don't worry your fluffy little head about anything, just go and, you know, look pretty. And I just got very frustrated, and that's why I left. And I decided to go to university and stop acting, actually, at the time. That changed later, but I did stop for 3 years.
So there was no opportunity in those days to say, speak with David Maloney about how you were feeling, and there's no input whatsoever?
I think I probably made so. I never remember. I was very young and I was very insecure and I was a bit frightened of saying things, but I did. Oh, looking through. Oh, no, I'm saying the same things again this week. Same things. God, you know. And I did make it known, but it wasn't. I didn't feel it was heard. And certainly after, but also I think, you know, I could have done more as an actress to make them come to me more if I'd known more about the skills of acting. But it was my first big thing, and I just didn't know enough. God, now I could. But I you know, I was very fond of David. He was a lovely man, and indeed a lot of the directors were really, really terrific. And, you know, I probably did what they wanted me to do, which was, you know, be the fluffy blonde and, you know, do my angle poise lamps. And but yeah, I would have loved to have done a lot more in it.
It was getting huge ratings and was a big success. Did that give you power, or not particularly?
No, I had no idea. I mean, I had no idea that it was getting huge ratings. You didn't have social media in those days. And you had no idea. I mean, the first time I realised that this was probably something quite big was in between a filming session. I was up in Scotland and I'd run out of money and I was trying to cash a cheque. And I handed this cheque over. They said, no, you haven't got any ID. And then somebody's face popped up and went whisper, whisper. And, oh, hang on a minute. No, we can cash your cheque. I said, well, what? Well, are you the actress in Bake 7? And I said, yes. And so they suddenly cashed my cheque. But that was the first time it really sunk in that, you know, I was in Scotland and that something obviously quite powerful was happening. But you weren't aware of it. You just weren't aware of it in the way that I would be now. I mean, now you have every understanding of how many. I had no idea we would get. Was it 10 million we used to go out to, I think?
Yeah, yes, at least 10 million.
Hadn't a clue. I was just going about my daily business and life and, you know, coping with the filming.
Right. So when they decided to write out David Jackson, kill him off, was that expected when they killed off that character?
No, I don't think. I mean, you know, we didn't know quite what had happened there. Again, it's not something you can talk about. I think we all felt very sorry for David because I think he was very upset. And I remember he had this sort of scene where he died under some polystyrene bricks, which was very light. And it was, yeah, it was, that must have been very hard for him because I think he would have been very aware of the popularity of the show much more than I would have been. But we all kept in contact with him and he came to the conventions and things. And
so when you decided to leave, was there any pressure to try and keep you to stay, or it was just okay?
No, I made it a fait accompli. I'd signed on for university. I said, that's it, I'm going, I'm sorry. I didn't give them an option. Gareth was leaving at the same time. We were both leaving at the same time. I can't remember his reasons. I think he just wanted to develop his career in different ways. And as I say, I wanted to go to university, but I don't think it sunk in because I remember Via Lorimer who was one of the producers, saying, or directors, saying at the leaving party when I left, he said, well, thank you for being such a vivacious and fun member of the cast, and good luck with your O-levels. Now, O-levels are the sort of exams you do as a teenager.
Yeah.
I mean, that was sort of, there was slightly that attitude in the BBC. You know, girls took O-levels and never very bright, and you wouldn't get on anywhere. I mean, he didn't mean it maliciously at all, but I was a bit taken aback because I'd worked very hard to get into university on the quiet.
So did you go to university because the experience just wasn't good, or you just felt like a new change and grow yourself?
I felt I had a boyfriend who was at Oxford. I felt undereducated. I was very disenchanted with the ethos at the BBC, and I was quite alarmed at the machinery of so-called celebrity, which seemed to be pushing us in a certain way. So there were combinations of issues, but primarily I wanted to really challenge myself and see if I could do an English degree and major in Shakespeare, because Shakespeare had been my love. Remember, I'd done a lot of Shakespeare in repertory theatre and had always loved it, but always felt a bit insecure about it. Anyway, I took evening classes and got my A-levels, not my O-levels, and I got into London University as a mature student. It was quite a big thing because I then, almost the week I got in, I got offered a big series with Patrick Stewart called Maybury. And my agent said, you've been offered this series with Patrick Stewart. And I said, but I've decided to go to university. He said, but you can't turn this down. I said, but I can't do university and do a series. And so I did turn it down and subsequently lost my agent. He wasn't pleased. But it was the best thing I did. I'm very glad I did it. You know, I mean, I would have loved to have done Maybury had it been at a different time. And Patrick Stewart of Star Trek would have been someone I'd have got to know very well. But, you know, that's the road I took.
So what was your focus in Shakespeare? What were you in particular studying?
All the plays, all 36. But I mean, you in 3 years at university, you look at all of the. I mean, you're obviously deconstructing the language. You're looking at the verse. You're looking at the prose. You're looking at the imagery. You're looking at the ideas. I mean, the themes are as real as they are today. I mean, humanity hasn't changed. You know, power, jealousy, wars, manipulation, love, racism, they're all there in all the plays. And we just would study them one by one. And of course, that's given me an enormous love of Shakespeare. Now I really understand it more and have deconstructed what I felt was quite complex. And so now I teach it a lot to younger actors, which I love. In fact, I've just got a young guy into RADA this few weeks ago, and we've been working on Zoom, and he's playing Othello. He's a mixed race boy with an enormous amount of talent, and I think he'll go far. So I'm thrilled that he's now got into RADA. So for me, it's like passing on the baton. I love teaching, and particularly Shakespeare. He is the master, along with Chekhov, in my view.
Okay. Chekhov is amazing to read. I find it very painful to watch.
Well, it's because you've seen rubbish productions. I mean, the fact is, I saw a production by the director I'm about to work with again soon. When I was, just before I went to university, I saw a production of The Seagull, and it had me in floods of tears and laughing at the same time. So it was like such an emotional and extraordinary experience that when I finished my degree, I wrote a dissertation on the humor in Chekhov. And if it's done well and really brilliantly and really, really well directed, I mean, they're meant to be comedies. They're human comedies about the sort of insanity of the way we all lead our lives and our wants and our desires and our losses. Yeah, I think he's a genius, but I don't think he's often done very well. For some reason in England, particularly, we do him frightfully seriously and very ploddingly. And everybody's thinking about Moscow, and it's not at all what Chekhov juxtaposes his characters next to each other, and without actually commenting on them, he heightens the absurdities we all have in our human nature by putting different characters next to each other in scenes, but it's so finely tuned and subtle that you have to go into it in great depth. But yeah, so I hope you see a good production one day, because he is a genius, in my view.
I want to impart, probably going to be a big discussion about Chekhov. We're not a Chekhov podcast. Yeah. I think part of what gets about, I think, Chekhov is I think people are so unable to see themselves well anymore that they can't therefore view themselves in these characters. So I think we are supposed to see ourselves in some of the characters and some of the worst traits, but I think we're so bad at self-perception that we're not now. That
absolutely,
we can no longer read ourselves in the characters, therefore we don't see the humor there.
But I mean, self-perception is what life is about, and if you haven't got it, you wouldn't be able to see. I mean, the humor there. I mean, we are now living in a world of judgments and ideas and views on everything, but actually start looking inside, start looking and seeing why we feel this or why we feel upset about something, what it is we're longing for, what is it we can't achieve, what is it somebody else makes us feel bad about or insecure. He's just a master of the psychology of human nature, in my view, as is Shakespeare. I mean, they're both great. But anyway, I could go on and be a bore about it, but it certainly it was a very good time for me to, I was 29, I'd left Blake 7, and I went into a totally different world completely. Suddenly I was a student with jeans. Nobody had a faintest idea of being in a TV series, and I was just back to being Sally and working hard.
So what brought you back to acting? So what happened? Because you studied for 3 years, you ended up back on Emmerdale was sort of your next big series. I assume you did some other things.
Yes, but actually that was really a financial decision. I certainly went into Emmerdale because I needed to, I'd obviously not been earning for a few years, and my agent said, "Oh, you can't do Yorkshire accent." I said, "What do you mean I can't do an Yorkshire accent? You never heard me." So I rang up Yorkshire Television and got myself an audition and got the part.
He's dying to meet you, Mum. He works up at the fish farm. It sounds really nice. You should invite him to tea if Annie doesn't mind, of course.
Of course not. You don't need my permission.
No.
Is tea ready?
Finally washed your hands, they'll be ready.
Still the same, nothing alters. Come on, Kate, lass. Drum up.
Would you mind awfully if I didn't eat? I'm not feeling that hungry, to tell you the truth.
No, of course not. Perhaps you'll fancy something later.
Yes, I might. I think I might go upstairs, actually. I've got a bit of a headache. You won't think I'm rude.
Of course not, love. Put your feet up. Watch a bit of telly.
I might come down later if I feel a bit better.
So it was very well paid in terms of, 2-year contract, doing 110 episodes a year. That was very, very good for me financially, and it helped me buy my house and all of that. Actually, what I wanted to do was become a director. And I'd done a director's option as well at university, and directed The Seagull, funnily enough, by Chekhov. And I made a couple of films, begged, borrowed and stole the money and the locations with friends, and made a couple of films and submitted them to the Beaconsfield Film School and got a bursary to do another film. And that was all terrific. I was really moving in the right direction to becoming a director, and was very encouraged to be so. But then some personal tragedies happened, and, which I'm not going to go into now, but life events took over, which actually stopped me being able to follow that path for quite a long time. So, yeah, I didn't become a director until much later in my 50s. I became a theatre director at the Tricycle Theatre. Yeah, so I carried on acting in various bits and pieces, and ended up working with my absolute all-time favourite director, a man called Mike Alfreds, who's now in his 80s, but he taught me just about everything good that I know about acting. And I worked with him for 2 years in his theatre company. And I'm now thrilled to say that I'm about to work with him again. And we're going to do a show in the new year at the Southwark Playhouse in London.
What show?
It's called 6 Characters in Search
of an Author.
No, in
Oh.
search of a good night's sleep.
Okay.
It's been devised and improvised over a year or so, and we worked together a lot the year before last. And we opened it we started rehearsing just as COVID started. And so we had 3 days rehearsal and boom, the whole thing was over. But I've just heard this week from the producer that we are going back in April, so I'm thrilled.
Okay.
He's a genius.
So lots of theatre work, lots of television work. When did you move into audio?
Well, COVID, really. I mean, it was a matter of necessity. After we were told the theatre was closing and we couldn't go ahead with the show, I thought, Christ, what am I going to do? You know, I've got to work. I've got to keep things going. And to begin with, I didn't know what to do. And I started learning poems. I would go on these long, long walks through Richmond. And I thought, I was inspired. I don't know if you've heard of him. There's this old boy called Colonel Tom, who raised millions of pounds walking around his garden.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Well, I thought, if he can do something, what can I do? So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll go for my long walks around Richmond and I'll learn a poem every week and I'll film it and put it on YouTube and raise money for old people in the care homes, because they were dying in their droves by this time. And it was an absolute debacle what was going on. So I started filming in my kitchen. I learnt the poems, which was pretty hard work at my age, to get them really good and to film them. And I put them up on a Just Giving site and YouTube, and I call them the Liberator Poems, after the spaceship, because I thought we might tap into our fan base a bit, and indeed we did. And I raised a hell of a lot of money for the old people. This is going to be a series of poems which I'll read or recite once a week, called the Liberator Poems. And for any of you who used to enjoy the Liberator spaceship, you'll know why I've chosen that particular name. But for anybody else who's suffering in lockdown at the moment, well, like we mostly are, all of us, I think liberation is a very pertinent word. We all want to be liberated. We all want to get back to our normal lives. And so I thought I'd offer up these poems to give us a little bit of sustenance, to uplift the spirits a little bit of spiritual sustenance, to connect us with nature, hopefully, and hopefully to make us laugh at times. The reason that I'm doing these poems at all is to raise money for Age UK. I've been particularly moved and touched by the stories I have been hearing about the elderly in care homes, the awful stories of people suffering and dying on their own without their families around them. And so I thought there is one thing I would like to do, which is to try and raise money for this group of people. And Age UK is my chosen charity. So if you feel you can donate, even if it's a small amount, I'd be enormously grateful. And if you'd like a particular poem dedicated to you, I really would ask you to donate for that. Thank you. Okay, so the first poem I'm going to recite tonight is called Hokusai Says. It's a particular favourite of mine, and it was written by Roger Keyes. Hokusai says, look carefully. He says, pay attention. Notice. He says, keep looking. Hokusai says, there is no end to seeing. He says, look forward to getting old. Keep changing. We just get more of who we really are. He said, get stuck. Accept it. Repeat yourself as long as it is interesting. He says,
keep doing the things that you love. He says, keep praying. He says, every one of us is a child. Every one of us is ancient. Every one of us has a body. He says, every one of us is frightened. He says, every one of us has to find a way to live with fear. He says, everything is alive. Shells, buildings, people, fishes, mountains, trees. Wood is alive. Water is alive. Everything has a life of its own. Everything lives inside us. He says, live with the world inside you. He says it doesn't matter if you draw or write books. He says it doesn't matter if you chop wood or catch fish. He says it doesn't matter if you sit and stare at ants on your veranda or the shadow of trees and leaves in your garden. It matters that you care. It matters that you feel. It matters that you notice. It matters that you let life live through you. Contentment is life living through you. Joy is life living through you. Satisfaction and strength is life living through you. Peace is life living through you. He says, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Love, feel. Let life take you by the hand. Let life live through you. Thank you.
And I became so inspired by doing all this recording and audio work. I thought, well, why don't I build a sound studio in my hut, which is this? So I took a punt, and actually Stephen Greif helped me design it.
He loves his microphones.
He loves his microphones. He told me what microphone to get, what headphones to get, what interface to get. He came round to lunch the other day, and actually he was very impressed. He said, oh, well done. This is exactly what you should have done. And then a friend of mine built this little tent thing, and Steve-O gave me some foam rubber to put in to soundproofing. And then I sit under loads of duvets. I mean, I'm not doing that now, but I sit under loads of duvets. And then it was just before COVID, I got COVID. I wrote to various people I'd known in the past. And I suddenly got all these offers of jobs. And actually, I was lying in bed thinking I was dying of COVID, thinking, I'll say yes, but I'm not sure if I'm going to be alive. And so in February, when I got better, I started doing all this stuff. And it was largely for Big Finish.
Well, before we talk about that, maybe we could jump right back to the first time you worked for Big Finish, which was for a production. It wasn't a Blake 7 production at all. It was a Doctor Who story.
Ah, Dr. Man Allen.
Called Spare Parts. And I just wanted to ask you, do you realise how highly regarded that story is in Doctor Who fandom?
Doctor Who. Spare Parts.
It's taken 6 years training, but the sky's the limit today as mankind sets out on its mission to see the stars.
This area is restricted to civilians.
Why? What aren't we supposed to see?
I saw your friend. Seemed like an amiable chap.
The doctor?
At Dodds.
What were you doing there?
What's happening?
Oh, power cut. Just when I got the lights on.
Sounds like your society's in its death throes. Not the end of the world. You could be right. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe Mondas doesn't have a future after all.
Emergency generators! Get the backup generators running!
Keep moving.
It's too dark to see!
No one leaves! No one!
Dr. Van Allen, you are relieved of your duties.
How dare you, Zhang! All this is my work! I created
created you.
And I am superior to you. Be proud while you still have the capacity.
That travesty that was once a human being is part of it. I don't know how long it'll take. I'm not even sure I want to stop it. But I can give you a wake-up call. It's up to you, not me, to change things and stop this horror once and for all.
Clear these streets. Return to your homes. There is nothing to see.
I did get somebody at a convention come and say, oh my God, that was really, really good. I did that in a little hut in Brixton with Peter in an afternoon and just had a bit of fun. But it's obviously done rather well.
Out of 1,000 or more productions that Big Fish have put out, that's in the top 5 of every fan.
Wow. It's massive. It's massive.
So, everyone said it's Peter's best story he ever did.
Really? Oh well, I must see Peter again, and we should try and reenact it or something, or do something else. But how funny! How incredible! Yeah, I mean, I have no idea how I even got that job. What was I doing something in Doctor Who? I have no idea. All I know, it was in a hut in Brixton, and I can vaguely remember doing it. But that's, I'm afraid, all I know. I've still got some of the outtakes because I've used it on some of my sci-fi showreel, which I've just compiled, because I'd love to now do lots more science fiction, which having been so rude about it years ago, I've changed my mind completely. And
I'll just give you my email address so you can send those to me.
Yeah. Well, I'll send you the showreel if you like. If you'd like to hear the showreel.
Yeah, that'd be excellent. Definitely.
Sure. It's not very long. It's only 2 minutes. It's just to tell people. So if anybody wants me to do a sci-fi thing at some point, I'm very happy,
Try and go past a shop or emporium run by one Thomas Dodd.
Dodd? That old hack.
Money? Well, no, not exactly.
What?
Dr. Man Allen, your light was on.
Morning already, Constant.
I've recruits due in for processing.
They won't mind waiting. Here, have a glass of wine.
No, thank you.
Please yourself. Happy holiday.
And your meeting with the committee?
Did they ever offer you augmentation?
We sistermen rely on our own discipline.
Oh, how abstemious.
Is that what they offered you? Augmentation?
Think of the benefits. Increased efficiency, clear thinking, no more endless fatigue.
I did do something recently. I did a Warhammer thing with somebody in Australia and somebody in California. I mean, it's been mind-boggling to me that I can have a sound recordist in California and the director in Australia. I mean, I had no idea of this potential. So it's opened up a new world, which I want to run with, because, if you can work in your own garden, in your hut, and do things regularly, it's wonderful given this particular climate.
So after that Doctor Who that you did, a few years later, Big Finish got the license to start doing some Blake 7 productions. What was that like, getting back together with some of the cast?
Actually, that was great, because we used to go down to this studio in Tunbridge Wells, somewhere near Tunbridge Wells, and because so much time had gone down, but when we re-met, it was like yesterday. We all knew each other so well. Jackie was there, Gareth was there, Paul was there, Michael was there, and we just knew each other so well. It's that thing when you've grown up together. There's a shared history which goes so deep, and you didn't have to think. You just could go straight into it. It was wonderful. And I was much, much more relaxed and happy about doing it because, well, I was 40 years older, which is quite a lot. And suddenly I could see all the wonderful points of it. And I think it brought Jan and I back together because we hadn't seen each other for a while and we'd all been doing different things. And we just slotted back into our friendship groups. And then we did, everyone did them over the next few years. I was always pleased to get them.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions. Blake 7, The Classic Audio Adventures.
I'm taking Liberator in on manual. We'll be in teleport range in 2 minutes.
What the hell was that?
Information. Liberator has been attacked.
You don't say.
Put up the force wall.
Confirm.
Message to all ground commanders. Initiate the final phase. Let's crush these rebels once and for all.
Blake, we can't take much more of this. We've got to make a run for it.
All of a sudden, a planet swarming with Federation troopers seems like a preferred option.
This is foolish, reckless. You're teleporting into the biggest concentration of Federation military we've ever come across.
Foolish, reckless. This plan's got you written all over it, Blake.
Liberator! Teleport! Teleport now!
My name is Avon. Kerr Avon.
Kerr Avon. You're one of Blake's people.
I'm not with his group anymore. We had a falling out.
I need teleport now!
And then there was one.
Our hostage arrives, which you may be unnecessary.
As a hostage, it's nice to be superfluous.
How long have you been here?
You don't seem very pleased to see me, Blake.
Subscribers get more at bigfinish.com.
I'd been doing mainly directing at this point because I was working a lot at the Tri-School Theatre and directing there, which was great. But it was fun to come and do these Blake 7 episodes and to see that they were still keen on, knowing about us. I mean, I was just fascinated that it still had this great following.
What do you think the secret is with Blake 7? Why do you think it still has that appeal all these years later?
I think the characters had depth. I think, we were a cast who got on well, and I think that must have shown. The Federation, fighting the Federation. I still feel like I'm fighting the Federation every day with our government. And, I think there was there aren't that many sci-fi shows. Well, of course, I wouldn't know, would I? Because I didn't follow it too much. There weren't an amazing amount of science fiction shows that rivaled it in England anyway. I mean, obviously there were films. I think the dialogue was witty. It was clever. I think we were the goodies, the Robin Hoods in space, and everybody likes that. I think the storylines are often ahead of their time and have come to fruition now. I mean, it was extraordinary. The other day, I was listening to a guy who has invented Siri for Apple, the talking, what do you call it? What is Siri? How do you define it? It's what you talk into in your phone. I always dictate my...
Be funny if they called it Zen, wouldn't it?
Well, guess what inspired him to make Siri? What did inspire him? He said Zen and Aurak from Blake 7. And he was also developing AI, which they're using these AI technologies, which sound a bit terrifying, about understanding people's emotional states. And they're using it actually rather horrifically at the moment on the Uyghur Muslims in China. But it's, again, these AI ideas were inspired by Blake 7. And he would have been a young boy at the time. I think the models were amazing. I think, at the time, and I still think there's a sort of romance behind it, isn't there, too? I mean, this one of the freedom fighters going off to help the dispossessed and always coming good and fighting the baddies. I don't know. What do you think? You tell me. What do you think? What are the lasting appeal of it as a program? Always very difficult to be objective.
For me, British science fiction, because Doctor Who and Blake 7 were made by similar production companies at the same time, or production teams, despite people always compare them to Star Wars, which was huge at the time, but I always tend to find myself going back to those because the stories were just so good. The stories are good, and that's what makes a piece of entertainment good. It's not how flashy it looks, how whiz-bangy it looks. It's the story. And
it's the story and the way the characters actually embrace those stories.
That's right. I was going to say, the characters and the way they gel together, like Blake 7, for instance, Paul Darrow is just incredible in that role. That he was born to play that particular role, and I think he milked that till the day he died too. So, but he was marvelous at it, and you know, all the characters in the show were fantastic in that same way all the way through. So
they're all very defined and separate, weren't they? I mean, you had Jackie, and then you had the Travises, and you had the Jan being the telepath, and me being the supposed feisty intergalactic space pirate, glamour puss.
Can I suspect if you actually go back and look at them again, there's a lot more in your character than you're giving yourself credit for. Because Jenna was always a huge hero of mine, and I thought a wonderful model in terms of for women. And even though, yes, there's times in which it was obvious that you were left out, and Jan and you were made to make the tea on the Liberator, there's actually a lot of powerful scenes where actually women weren't getting many leading roles. And there was the odd show like The Avengers where you had a strong female characters, but you and Jan were both strong characters, strongly written with strong function. And even though the scripts didn't always let you do as much as the men, you were still sitting there with as strong women who I don't know, I filled in the gaps. Because I actually
that's really good to hear, actually, because I think it was the beginning of my journey of becoming a stronger woman, and it empowered me, even though in a funny way, because I was frustrated, it empowered me to become more, not a heavy feminist, but a strong individual woman. And, even though I was frustrated about what I couldn't do, I think you're right. I think if I did actually sit and watch some the other day, because I was having to play all of us in the spaceship for an audiobook. So I had to go and remind myself of everybody. And I was actually thinking, oh God, it's not quite as bad as I thought I was.
And I think you should give yourself credit in terms of you were the template for the future women. So you probably didn't watch the show after you left, but in terms of the new female characters, both Dana and Sulan, who would come for the following seasons, they were both able to be much even stronger women characters, which couldn't have been if you hadn't broken more groundwork.
Yeah, that's probably very true. And I should probably watch the other episodes, the other two series, just to look at that in as an overview. But yeah, I mean, it was a very unique show, and there's nothing like it, is there? I mean, since nothing has come anywhere near it as a show. I don't think it's just so much itself, isn't it?
It was able to do politics. I think the power of science fiction, what you're saying, I think why science fiction is powerful is it can tell stories that are political without looking political. And so it can do issues that you can't do as a drama because it just comes across as attacking the government, doing these things. But in science fiction, you can actually attack governments without people who don't bother to look through the messaging, can't see it. But there's this message coming through of actually, and you look at the Federation, look what it was saying about government, look at it in terms of rule keeping. When you look at some of those characters, there's really strong messages that they're giving to people, which you couldn't do in a Today drama because it would just look too political. And
it would be too on the nose, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas now, you see, I didn't really understand that. I was running so fast to keep up on my first telly. I didn't really get that. Now I can see that much, much more. And all the stories I've been doing now for Big Finish and for Venus Planet and things, I'm beginning to see, oh, wow, yeah, you can really, you can really address lots of issues in a more oblique fashion, but really getting the message across. So I've grown up to understand how important it is now, and I'd like to do more and more.
How have you been finding the scripts with Big Finish?
I think they're pretty good. I've done quite a lot, so it's going to be difficult to sort of.
I'm not going to ask you about the fifth line of the third script.
No, please don't, because when you do them and you do them quite intensely, and then you do another one a few days later, you think, oh my God, which one was that? Babylon Butcher or Terra Nostra? And you do them, and then they go again. But I did an audio book, which was an enormous challenge, but I hope it'll be all right, called the Paluma Project, which was also for Big Finish. But in that, I played everybody. And that was a phenomenal responsibility because so many of them are no longer with us. And it felt golly, if I've got to make an approximation of their type, it's very, very hard to do that well, I think, in such a short period of time. But it was fascinating just trying to get one's head around 5 or 6 of the different characters in the Liberator on one page and having to go into different types of voices and characters. So it's an enormous challenge, but I want to do more, and I want to develop that side of my work much more.
So that's just been released this month, actually, Palooman Project.
Has it?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I didn't know that.
It's about to be. It's been released.
It's not showing as. It hasn't been released quite yet. It is due for July. It says July, so it'll be in the next few days, I would say.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I hope it'll be all right.
It'll be fantastic. I'll let you know in a couple of days' time.
No, don't. If it's rubbish, don't tell me. Don't tell me.
Then if you don't hear from us, you'll know.
Yes, I know. Well, now you're going to have to say, "Oh, it was great." And
No, I wouldn't do that.
rubbish. But anyway, yeah. I mean, I think also the moral ethos was good, and they stand by each other. And the Liberator, everybody supports each other, even though there's the fighting between Paul and Gareth, and there's always a slightly titillating relationship. Is Jenna going out with Blake or all of that? Because it was early evening, we never developed that side of the characters. But there was a lot there, I think, and absolutely underpinned by the fact that we got on so well as actors and as friends.
You were talking before about the acting between moving from stage, which was big, to television, which was smaller. What's the technique that moves when you move to just a microphone? As an actress, what are you trying to do?
Again, it's learning to do less, not pushing it. Keep less, and really getting yourself right up against the microphone and getting what Stephen describes as the sweet spot. So, and then making the pictures with your voice, which is a very different thing because you haven't got your body to do it. So you've got to really color. You've got 26 or 28 notes at our disposal in the human voice. And it's trying to color things without over pushing them and getting the nuance and the emotional intention right. So it's quite a complicated thing, and it's taken, I've done quite a lot of commercials and things for audio, but I've not done this sort of work very much before. So again, I'm probably learning on the job, but hopefully getting there. It's much easier when you're working with a cast, when I've got other people to bounce off, because you know what your character is, particularly as Jana, I do. And, you're just playing the situation. When you're doing an audio book, that's much more complicated because you're moving from narrator to the guy running the spaceship, to Jenna, to Blake, to Severland, to Callie, and back again, and a different situation. So you're literally color coding all the voices, and you're thinking, crikey, what's that character in grey? Who's he? What's his voice? Oh yeah, he's middle-aged, he's gravelly, he's old and bad-tempered. So you give yourself a little brief and you write a crib sheet because you don't have time to really. You work on it beforehand a lot, but you don't have time when you're recording. You've got to dance on a sixpence and think, oh, Christ, I've got to get into that voice and that voice. And sometimes you make it and sometimes you don't. And sometimes you have to go back and do it again. So your sound recordist is your absolute best friend. And I'm very lucky. I've got this wonderful sound recordist who's worked with me a lot called Paul Midcalf. And he's like a genius. He can pull it all together. I think, God, that was a scene I fell about in a bit, and he just pulls it all together, which is the art of sound recording.
So, you're saying Blake's right? Avon cast a withering sidelong glance at Villa. I am not, he replied. Then why are you going down there? Sometimes Villa's incessant, childlike questioning really grated with Avon. He could feel himself fast approaching that stage now. Avon took a deep breath. He didn't want to waste unnecessary energy on the man. It doesn't matter what you or Blake think. By teleporting down there, I'm not justifying anyone else's view except my own. You said you didn't like the idea. I don't like the idea of there being an apparent Federation base about which we can find no information. He approached Aurak and activated the flashing box. Anything yet? Be more precise, answered the fussy voice. I've only asked you to do one thing, Avon sounded threatening. I can still trace no information relating to the installation on the moon below, nor any movement orders relating to a transport craft of that specification. Keep looking and keep me informed. Avon swept from the flight deck, Villa at his heels like a faithful puppy. You don't believe it's Federation, do you? Let's just say I'm keeping an open mind. Avon strode towards the teleport bay, which is more than can be said for our great leader most of the time, he added sourly. Jenna tightened the utility belt around her leather jumpsuit and slipped a teleport bracelet onto her wrist. She turned to Blake. He looked somewhat out of place seated behind the teleport controls. The impracticality of his wing-sleeved jacket made him seem even more incongruous. What? He asked, as she maintained her gaze a little too long. You don't want to go? No, I'm happy to, Jenna replied. Blake nodded. Good. You've been cooped up on the ship for far too long. She gave him a wry smile. Always difficult for the pilot to leave their station. Well, you don't have to worry this time. Gan is more than capable in your absence, and we'll keep ourselves concealed anyway. I'm assuming I'm keeping an eye on Avon for you? Blake chuckled. Not at all. I trust him to do the right thing, even if he thinks otherwise. No, I trust your judgment, Jenna. Avon has the technical skills, but you have the ability to appraise. Flatterer, Jenna thought, although she'd said nothing aloud. He was playing to an agenda again, trying to make it look like he was giving Avon and Jenna a free rein. She sometimes wished Blake wasn't so politically driven. The quest to bring down the Federation was more important to him than anything else. If he'd relax from time to time, she wondered if they might enjoy each other's company a little more. Jenna was dedicated to Blake's cause, like most of the crew, because it suited her for now, but that wouldn't last forever. Like the Liberator. It was an amazing ship, a real joy to fly, and Jenna had an affinity with her. After all, the name Liberator had been taken from her thoughts by the ship, by Zen, when Jenna, Blake and Avon had first been sent abroad to salvage her. But the pressure on their band of rebels was increasing all the time, and it was clear that Liberator could not last indefinitely against the Federation's fleet of pursuit ships. Jenna's train of thought was broken as Avon joined them, with Villa in tow. Blake spoke into the teleport communicator. Ready to move, Gan? Villa appeared momentarily flustered. He's still resting. Do you want to fly the ship out of the particle cloud then? Blake asked, with a glare. I'll go and get him. Villa scampered away. Jenna rolled her eyes. Avon clipped a teleport bracelet about his wrist, then checked his gun was plugged in before drawing it and standing in the teleport bay. Jenna joined him. There's air down there? Avon asked. The energy signature, such as Zen can read it, is consistent with full life support in operation, Jenna confirmed. Avon glanced at her. I hope you're right. They stood there for a few more seconds before they felt the sudden movement of the ship, and Gan's voice came over the communicator. We're coming out of the particle cloud now. Nothing adhering to the hull according to Zen, and we're safe to operate the teleport. All right, Blake, put us down, snapped Avon. I'll give you 2 hours. We'll use the planet to conceal us, just to be safe. Find out what you can and try to stay out of trouble. He said that with a straight face, Jenna thought, as the teleport activated and the world around her changed.
Now, you've done full cast audio plays now. You've done a lot of the Liberator Chronicles originally, which was just two-handers.
Yes.
And now you do audiobooks. Which do you prefer? You prefer the full cast, I think you were saying? Yes?
I think I prefer the full cast. Yes, I like working with other people. It can get quite lonely doing a book on your own for weeks on weeks in your little... And it's very intensive because it's, 6 hours of solid recording on your own. It's exhausting, maybe more sometimes. Whereas when you're doing scenes, sometimes you have a scene out, so you've got time to grab a coffee and come back in again. And you're bouncing off other people and, they are bringing the scene alive with you simultaneously. And you've got a director working with you saying, oh, can we redo that little bit and blah, blah, blah. Whereas in an audiobook, you are your director and all your characters and everything together. It's very intense. And it's something I want to do more of because I listen to audiobooks all the time. And I'm in absolute awe of people who can do them brilliantly because they are very, very intensive work. But a lot of actors hate doing any audio, but no, I'm enjoying it. I mean, one's biggest worry for something like Blake 7 is, do I sound so old now? I mean, hopefully I can get into the voice range where I still sound more or less like Jenna. But obviously I'm a lot older.
Yeah, you're not sounding it at all.
Oh, well, that's very nice to hear.
Voice sounds great.
Well, you just don't know because I listen to other actors and think, oh my God, they sound ancient. You think, so I'm trying to work hard on getting the upper registers and not going down into the gravelly voice, chest voice. And, there's a lot of work that goes into all of that and focus on it.
Now, sadly, we lost Gareth, we lost Paul, we lost Jackie, all sort of in quick succession. And I guess many of us thought that was it in terms of Big Finish for Blake 7. And now Big Finish have come back amazingly reinventing themselves with these new series.
Yes.
So Avalon came back. You had a story which actually introduced the character before the show started.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I couldn't believe it. I was playing before I got into the Liberator, which was fascinating. And I was a bit overawed by that because I thought, well, how old am I meant to be? 23 or something? But anyway, I just let that go and just carried on doing. And now the last one I've done, I seem to be off. I mean, I'm getting, there's some few darker sides, developing in her too, the space, not the space, the space pirate, and her getting deals to sort of, so she can survive as a solo person. I mean, she's still got all the goodness of Jenna, but there's some few little dark deals she nearly did in the last episode, which I'm not going to talk about because you'll hear them. But I suddenly feel there's so much potential for Jenna now. All the things I was frustrated about in the old days, I now think she can do, and I will be allowed to do because A, I'm older and more confident. B, women have a very different place in society and theatre and drama now. And yeah, I feel I'm capable of giving it a lot of welly now, which is fun.
Well, Colin Baker was given a bit of a raw deal when he was on the telly too, and Big Finish rectified that. So they're a good company to do that.
Yes, they're very good. And David Richardson is such a nice man. And he's been giving me quite a lot of work recently. And I did one with Colin. I can't remember what that was called. Was that the Butchers of Babylon?
The Babe and the Butcher.
I think so, yeah.
It might just be called Baben.
Baben. He was Baben the Butcher, that's right. Yeah, and then Andrew Mark Sewell, do you know him? He was very connected with the production. I think he got the rights of Blake 7 after we finished, and he was the guy who was always going to make the new series, but it's never quite happened. But he's just recently done a thing called Venner's Planet, and I have played the rather dominatrix Countessa in that. I'm not playing Jenna, but I'm playing Countess Gallo in that, and that's been great fun to do too. So yeah, all sorts of things are being thrown at me from different sides, and it's great. I'm very, very pleased.
So you've become quite passionate about all your acting, but you're passionate about other areas as well. I know one of your passions is climate change. So
yeah.
Why are you so passionate about climate change?
Why? Because I
Dumb
think
question, I know.
The single most important issue that's facing us globally. And, you know, I think the statistics are terrifying. You know, by the end of this century, it's sort of looking like a sort of Armageddon unless we really deal with things now. I mean, we have committed, I think, to 1.5 emissions, and we are nowhere near that. We're up to 4 and rising at the moment. And I think we've got a window of about 8 years before things get really, really bad. And, you know, we can see it now. I mean, our weather pattern has gone bonkers here. But it's gone bonkers. There's a very good book I read recently called Climate Justice by Mary Robinson, who was the president of Ireland. And she went around the world sort of interviewing largely women from different countries, you know, Africa, Indonesia, various countries, and just seeing, and Bangladesh, and seeing what's happening in those countries. And their lives are completely being affected now. We are the first world, but the second, third world scenarios are apocalyptic. You know, their crops are not growing, they are flooding at the wrong time. And we're so bad with immigration in this country, but by 2050, I think we're going to have 200 million environmental migrants if we don't get our act together, because these countries are just, people can't survive. So I think the problem is it's been caused by the first world, and it's impacting the third world first, but it'll come to us very soon. And it is already coming in terms of our weather patterns. And I think every single person on this planet should take it seriously and do something, however small. And it could be it could be simple things, you know, like, you know, well, I've got a whole list of things here I put down, but, you know, I'm about to change my heating. I'm getting rid of gas. I'm trying to ditch the fossil fuels, change our cars if we can to electrical. I cycle everywhere around London. I never use a car. Try and use public transport. Don't fly so much. Rewilding, put solar panels on your house, eat less meat, grow your own food, lobby your government, you know, encourage urban canopy around towns and cities so we get more green everywhere. Reforestation, I mean, the loss of the forest, the Amazon rainforest is disastrous, absolutely disastrous. You know, and plastics, you know, plastics, disastrous. So we can all play our parts. And I heard a program just before I came on here. We've got a big summit going, the COP26, which is beginning to happen in Glasgow. And, you know, and I don't want to be sexist here at all, but, you know, it's largely run, a lot of these things, by older men who are looking so much at economics of everything. But I just wish more and more women would get galvanized, because I think women are very good across the board in terms of communication, and not always just looking at an economic thing, but saying, you know, this is a perilous situation. We have to change our ways of living. It's quite easy for me to say, because I've had a very good life, you know, and I have been able to do a lot of the things I suggest we shouldn't do so much now. But it's an emergency. It's not just a joke. And if we don't wake up to it, we won't have a world to live in. I mean, there's a very good action fund called giving.org, globalgiving.org. So if you can't feel you can do anything individual, you can always put some money in. But yeah, just find out ways in which, Google ways in which everyone can just do their little bit. All of us can. But frighteningly, when I talk about it, so many people say, "Oh yeah, don't get too alarmist about it." But I think it has to be taken seriously.
It's hard to know whether people can take it seriously, just in terms of just looking at the COVID situation. People, it's some of the worst in people we've seen come out. In terms of, I mean, I don't know whether you've had, every time any lockdown gets mentioned in Australia, all the toilet paper gets taken. Like people wheeling out trolley loads of toilet paper, thinking you can't possibly need that much toilet paper. Of all the things that you're trying to stock up on, like bread or pasta or things would make more sense.
But you see, we've become a consumerist society where it's me. I've got to grab, and of course you don't do that. You can't do that. I mean, we can live with newspaper as toilet paper. It's not the end of the world. People did, I mean, people get hysterical, but they get much more hysterical when everything, when their cars are flooding down. I mean, last week we had cars literally lifting off the pavements and going down the road in floods of water. Old ladies being rescued from their flats in London. It's going to impinge on all our lives, and toilet paper and little things like that are the least of our problems. And also look at the children. I mean, I've got loads of nephews and nieces and kids in my life, and the idea of them inheriting this terrifying world where there are more storms, there are more fires, there are more tornadoes, there are more floods. Heating is going, it was so hot here last week, we could hardly breathe. And now it's pouring with rain. It's gone topsy-turvy. And I've got some statistics here. I don't know if it's there, but the concentration of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, May 2020, is the highest it has been in human history, which is pretty high, isn't it?
Yeah.
NASA data showed that the average global temperature in 2019 were 1.8 degrees warmer than the 20th century average. In fact, the warmest 5 years have been recorded since 2015 ever. And it's irrefutable. It's I could go on. I'm not going to give a whole load of stuff.
It's irrefutable, and yet we have governments and so many people still deny it's happening.
I was going to say it's frustrating. I went swimming on the Great Barrier Reef in 2014, and 5 years later in 2019 I went back, and it's like a different place. The colour just wasn't there. It's not gone, it bleaches. So the
bleaches, that's right. Yes,
the vibrant colours are sort of just white, and it's incredible. There are still businessmen, politicians still debating whether it's actually real. And I don't know anything about anything really, and I can just say with my own eyes I saw a big change in just 5 years of swimming on the reef. So it was massive.
So it's happening. Everybody does know it's happening. It's about stopping thinking, oh, well, I can do nothing about it. It's about the politicians. Everybody can do something. That's what I believe. We can all do little things and talk to our friends and make little changes. And that's where the power of public, I mean, that's what Shakespeare's always going on about, the power of the public is enormous once we get going. And it's beginning to happen. But not fast enough. And it's, we're in a climate emergency. And we've all got to take it desperately seriously. And if anybody out there wants to write a science fiction episode about it, I'll be up there to play it, because but anything that can get the information out to the public, that it's and in a way that they find palatable. I mean, people humankind can only take so much reality, and I think we have that in our natures. I can't cope with that. Now I've got to go and get my shopping, but we have to look at this.
I think the point has to be put across, if you're talking in a science fiction setting, in a way that it's not so close to us that you can actually look at them and actually empathize with the story, rather than feel like you're personally being preached at. I think that's what a lot of people
people
find.
hate being preached at, don't they?
Exactly. And I think if it's done that way, then that's perfect.
Well, if you've got people out there in your fan base or wherever, tell them to get writing. Because and also just to look up the facts for themselves and to explore it and just listen to what's going on. So yeah, it's something I think that's the most important thing for me to do now for whatever time I've got left on this planet. That's what I want to commit to, and hopefully I'll be able to make some difference at some point.
I'm sure you can.
Where I live here in Tasmania, it's a very green state. Lots of greenies here, and one of the councils in the state, Hobart City, has just banned all plastic of every description from takeaway. So it's completely banned now. So it surprises me that they don't go further than just Hobart, but that's where it starts, I guess.
But I mean, that's a great. I mean, we should be lobbying all our governments to say that. I mean, at the moment, everything I buy, I was talking about this yesterday with a friend, is got plastic. I mean, I'm trying now to buy things that have got no plastic. Or the other thing we're doing is when we do buy something that's got plastic, take it out of its plastic in the supermarket and dump the plastic in the trolley and make a statement, which is what we have been doing recently, which is good. But I mean, when I was a kid, everything was in brown paper bags. You didn't have to have it in plastic. And I now get an organic box, which people say, oh, you can't afford to buy organic. Well, it cost me £13.50 to get a week's worth of vegetables in a brown box. That is surely 2 takeaways for the average person. It's nothing. It's such a little amount, but we've become used to fast, convenient, processed, having what we want when we want it, but we can't continue like this. And I think if once people got really into the right mindset, they would feel very empowered and excited about trying to make change. It's just that there's an immense amount of apathy and evasion.
I think as you make small changes personally, you become committed to demanding it from other people. So I know there was a huge there's just someone, I don't know if it's just Australia started, but in Sydney, who was going around trying to ban all plastic straws and going from place to place to place to place. And since then, now we have this huge uptake of paper straws. And so our McDonald's now, no plastic straws, it's only paper straws. And people complain because, I'd rather a plastic straw. But you can slowly see changes happening. Yeah. But unless the governments get on board too and start helping out, it's going to become harder and harder.
No, but I mean, and I talk to the young, because a lot of the young are working so hard they don't have time to think about things. That's the other problem. They're all trying to save their jobs and working God knows how many hours. But they're all saying, well, the least you can do is lobby your local politician and say, come on, this has got to change. And sign petitions and maybe donate to some of these websites that are doing what they can. And not use, I mean, what's this about phones? Why does everyone have to have a new phone every few weeks? I mean, we don't need new phones. One phone could last you a lifetime, but it's become a fashion accessory, like trainers. It's bonkers.
Because they make them now with fixed batteries that wear out in a couple of years, and you can't replace the batteries without buying a new phone.
Well, I've had my iPhone 5E for God knows how long. It's not brilliant, but at least it works.
I can tell it still works.
Yes, because it rang, didn't it? Anyway, I'm no great politician, but I do feel passionately about this issue because I look at all my nephews and nieces and these beautiful little kids growing up into a world that is terrifying. In my year, it was the atomic bomb, and now it's this. And I want to get everybody out marching and get everybody. Because we can't march because of COVID.
Well, Sally, it's been wonderful talking to you. It's been lovely hearing the fact that a voice that you've used for acting for more than 40 years and continue to use to bring as much joy is now a voice also for passion for change. So thank you so much for sharing with us today. We really loved talking with you, and so thank you so much.
Very, very nice to meet you, and thank you for inviting me.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions, Blake 7, The Way Ahead.
Tell me about Blake. Villa, tell me about Avalon.
All right, then. You might not like what you hear.
Travis.
Supreme Commander, welcome to your new battle cruiser.
Impressive. I hope this little experiment is worth it.
Avalon, what happened? I can't... We were winning. The Federation was retreating. Then
what?
It happened so quickly.
You've been trying to kill us for a long time, Travis. We're still waiting for you to get it right.
Well, things are changing. Blake's crusade is coming to an end.
Yes, Avon. The Liberator is a weapon. A weapon you have chosen to squander. Senior figures in the rebellion are dissatisfied with your activities in the aftermath of the war.
I didn't realize we were answerable to anyone.
We should retreat back to the base.
Too late.
This is a fine mess you've got us into, Avon. No guns, no Liberator, nothing.
How many times has it come to this? You and I, alone together.
I've never bothered to count.
And fate just can't keep us apart.
There she is.
Attack vector plotted. Here goes nothing.
Today we strike in the name of Rog Blake.
Big Finish. We love stories.
Well, Philip, how was that?
Well, I thought that was pretty fantastic, Dwayne.
I thought you would think that.
Yeah, I know. I'm totally biased. I'm swept away. Still on a high, I am, Dwayne.
Yeah. It's lovely that Sally was able to take so much time to speak with us. So thank you very much, Sally. And I hope you certainly enjoyed that too, all you watching and listening. So let's go to our recommendations for this week. And in a surprise note, it's your turn, Philip.
Oh, okay, my turn. I'm going to start, unsurprisingly, with a Sally Knyvette story. Having just had her on, I think it's good to recommend to them. And all of you know I'm a huge Companion Chronicles fan. I'm also a huge Liberator Chronicles fan. I don't know whether people have listened to many of those, but in preparation for today, I've actually listened to a number this week and super enjoyed them. So one of them was Revenant, but I'm not going to recommend that. That's with Paul Darrow and her. I'm actually going to recommend one of her stories from Box 6, which is called Jenna's Story. It's by Stephen Lyons. Now, one of the disappointing things to me about how Jenna leaves the show in Blake 7 is she just disappears at the end of season 2 along with Blake. Season 3 starts, picks up almost straight away. We know that her and Blake have both been jettisoned in life pods, but we hear bits and pieces from them, but we never actually see what happened. And at the very end, the very final episode of Blake 7, Blake tells Tarrant what happened to Jenna at the end, in terms of how her end of her story. Jenna's story is the story about Jenna's end. We actually find out what happened to her from the time she left the Liberator till her end that is described by Blake. So if you want to find out what Jenna's story is, it's a great story that Big Finish has filled in that big gap that was missing for the TV show. And
awesome.
Brilliantly played by Sally.
Fantastic.
What about you, Dwayne? What have you been listening to today?
Well, I'm going to recommend something that I haven't listened to yet. Does that sound strange?
I love it when you do that, Dwayne.
Right, I'm going to recommend a podcast. But the reason I am going to listen to this one myself is because I've been watching something that is based on this podcast. And it's a series on Stan called Dr. Death. I don't know if you have Stan and if you've seen it pop up, but it is popping up on the homepage all the time. So I've been watching that over the last few days, and it's based on a true story about a neurosurgeon in Texas who was botching dozens of operations on people over the space of a couple of years, and he was getting shuffled around from hospital to hospital, and no one was doing anything about it. So he was like sociopathically really hurting these people, botching their, turning them into quadriplegics, and even on a couple of occasions they died. So I've found that a fascinating story, and it's based on a podcast of the same name, Dr. Death. So I've found that online. Just do a Google search for it, and I'm going to check that podcast out too, because it's very intriguing.
It sounds really cheerful. Like, that's going to put me in a really good mood to listen to that. Excellent.
Well, okay. It's if you're into true crime.
No,
it's one of those. I know you're just trying to be funny. I'm not biting. Sorry. But if you're into true crime, this is it's a really good one. The TV show stars Alec Baldwin and Christian Slater, who play really good roles. So I can recommend the TV series as well as the podcast. So there.
Fantastic.
All right, so that'll do us for this time. It's been wonderful to share your company, Philip. Thank you.
And you as always too, Dwayne.
And we'll catch you next time for The Sirens of Audio. Bye. You have been listening to The Sirens of Audio, episode 73, Fighting the Federation, Saving the Planet, with our special guest Sally Knyvette and your hosts Philip Edney and Dwayne Bunny. Next time on the show, we continue our Blake 7 series with Randomoids VI, Revenge of the Selectortron, where we will review the Blake 7 Chronicles Volume 3, The Armageddon Storm. Opening theme music by the Jackpot Golden Boys. Closing theme by cjwho. Email address is sirensofaudio@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and your favourite podcast app. Rate, review, comment and like to your heart's content. Your interaction helps others to see this program. Join our Facebook group by searching for The Sirens of Audio on that platform. Tweet us at Audio Sirens. Leave your own 60-second clip of audio feedback for us at anchor.fm/sirensofaudio. Just follow the prompts. And if you're feeling rebellious and want some quality stories from not just the universe of Doctor Who but Blake 7 as well, keep listening to Audio Drama. Because audio drama... Roar!